ようこそどうぞはじめまして
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO chat. Still technically an anime podcast, although we're going to go off on a little bit of a tangent this week. And it's close enough to
number
anime,
one, still technically an anime podcast on the internet.
What can we say? The GLORIO network is diversifying. We have seen...
We're going backwards into the past and forwards into the future.
Yes, we have seen your input. We have seen the metrics. We see that there is a ripe new market to be captured here. And that is why the GLORIO network will be starting its own gacha game.
We had our beta in April.
Yes. We'll provide more details on that later, I'm sure. But yes, so for this week's episode, maybe I should just start with a confession. I play gacha games. It's hard to say, but the truth is the truth.
I mean, isn't that really the purpose of this podcast? Is to get the three of us together and just hash this out once and for all?
Yes.
I used to, and I got out. Trying to track me back in.
They say, as they say, the first step in, overcoming a problem is admitting you have a problem, right? So, but yes, we are aware, gacha games and their fans have a certain reputation that is not always good, and rightfully so, as there are some problems with them. But, I think in moderation and in some circumstances, they can be kind of fun. And
but Jel, what is a gacha game?
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But there is fun to be had with these things in moderation, and it is at the very least what's hot with the kids these days. So probably worth talking about. Before we get into that, so let's just introduce who we have on the show today. So returning to the podcast, we have Iro.
Hi.
Iro is back, and he is primarily here to help us dunk on Fate Grand Order. So
always up for that.
Glad to have you back. And we also have Gee.
Yo.
And this whole thing started because Gee and I were left in the GLORIO chat alone as everybody was away and busy and whatnot for like a week. And we started talking about Girls Frontline, which had just come out in English. And one thing led to another, and before you know it, we kind of got in a little Are we going to say too deep? We got into it. Let's just say that.
I mean, look, like a lot of things in life, it's a combination of factors. There's the timing, there's the other things that were going on in my life. It's easy to just pin it on gacha, but really we could all say that actually it was your guys' fault for leaving the chat for so long. Really,
hey,
Gee and I have done nothing wrong. Gee and I have done nothing wrong. We really were left with no choice.
We were entirely justified without the support net, without the safety net of the rest of the chat. Descending into gacha chat was quite literally inevitable. It was entirely foreseeable, and thus I think that Jel and I are completely free of blame.
Yes, of course. A little more realistically, I think you and I just have a lot of time where downtime where we have nothing but our phones to keep us occupied.
Yes.
And that's probably the best case scenario for when to play gacha games, when you have literally nothing else you can do but play around on your phone. And
yep, it's the joys of working a job where you have anywhere from 1 to 3 hours of downtime with nothing else to do and no other responsibilities.
Right. So, I think in those scenarios, these things can be kind of fun. Certainly more fun than just reading Twitter or something. I don't know. But yeah, so let's talk about the games themselves. And, as always with these topic shows, we like to start with maybe a little bit of background history. I'm not going to say I'm necessarily an expert or can trace every, feature and everything back to its roots, but at the very least, we can say that the name Gacha Games, if you're not familiar, stem from the word gachapon, which are the certain type of vending
Capsule
capsule machines, where you stick your coins in, you get a capsule, and inside the capsule is a random toy, and so
gotta collect them all.
And you gotta collect them all. There's and some are going to be more rare
more
than
and
others.
more 100 yen coins.
Yeah, some are going to be more rare than others, and that collection, that random collection aspect, has carried over into a lot of mobile games, where you throw in your premium currency, and you get a random character or weapon or whatever thing that they put in the gacha machine for you. So.
And some not so mobile games.
And so, yes, well, it has spread in a lot of other areas as well. But we're gonna today talk about there are literally like hundreds of these, maybe even thousands of these games out there. But we're gonna focus
thousands.
There's a lot out there, man. If you go, you go trawling.
Star Wars Battlefront 2 is outside of the scope of this podcast.
You could probably extend the definition of gacha games past some of the ones that we're talking about here. But so we're gonna hit the big ones.
I mean, I suppose it.
Go ahead, G.
I would say I do suppose it is worth bringing up for people who, I mean, frankly, I think anybody who listens to our podcast probably already knows what they are. But on the off chance that anybody happens to be listening to this podcast who is coming from a more Western perspective, the closest analogy would probably be loot boxes in video games. The
Overwatch, Star Wars,
the idea
Fortnite.
The idea of using in-game currency, or often real-world currency, to buy boxes or packages, so to speak, filled with a supposedly randomly generated number of items.
One could
and
liken them
characters
to one could liken them to like booster packs in Magic the Gathering.
Yes, that's also a good comparison. Or those like those kid robot vinyl toys. Kind of a similar concept of blind box.
Right.
Rewards, so to speak.
Right. There are other
going to a con and they have brown lunch bags that say random stuff on them.
Yes, there are other concepts that are also kind of similar, where it's basically you're putting in money and getting random stuff out. So yeah. All right. So like I said, we're gonna hit some of the big ones here. Apologies in advance to Bang Dream fans, you didn't make the cut.
Bang Dream feature in Poppin' Party.
Yes, which is actually kind of a
fun to
game,
say,
but it's a very stingy game. I didn't like it, but anyway, we're gonna do these also in vaguely chronological order and maybe get a little history in there. And so we're gonna go all the way back to 2011,
before the GLORIO era,
before the minus one of the GLORIO era, and the first game we'll talk about is Rage of Bahamut, which was, I don't think it was the first game by Cygames, but it was their first huge success, and one of the first of these gacha games that kind of follows the present day formula that was a massive success. Which I'll note, in Japan it was a success. It was not very successful worldwide because they didn't release it until like several years later, and there were a lot better games out at that point. But I
think Granblue was already out at that point.
Yeah, although Granblue technically has not also been released, has had a worldwide release. But
okay.
We'll get a test too. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Granblue's weird, but with that,
yeah.
But Rage of Bahamut did have a short. I think it was only live for a year or two. Release worldwide did not do as well at that point. But I did not personally play this game more than like an hour. It was not really a game per se. It was very much just like a card collecting thing, and you would like the actual gameplay was just like kind of tapping on a screen until you win or lose. I wasn't really clear what even the mechanics were or anything. It was really just and this will be a recurring theme, an excuse to dump money into it and try to collect some, art of scantily clad anime girls.
Hell yeah.
Was Favaro ever in that game? Like, I have to ask.
I actually I'm not sure, but I don't think he was.
That's
And
a real fucked up.
Of course, Iroh is referring to the anime Rage of Bahamut Genesis.
Yeah.
Yes.
The number second best.
No. It was
the number one best. Yeah.
Yes. Rage of Bahamut is the actual best fantasy anime of 2014, I believe.
Yes, and which was very, very loosely based on the Rage of Bahamut mobile game, and which is to say,
that show was good.
It had almost nothing to do with it other than like Azazel's in it. But this, I think Rage of Bahamut, it was a big success in Japan, but I think it was mostly important for establishing Cygames, who will come up again here, who is one of the biggest games companies, let alone mobile games companies, in existence at the moment.
Yeah, they're spreading out into anime and shit now. They open their own studio.
Like, they're big enough to sponsor EVO despite not having a game in EVO. Like,
I mean, it's one of those things where I think it speaks to. I think in many ways, right? Like Rage of Bahamut, both the game and the anime were kind of a sign of things to come, right? The idea that you could take these games with these very, very simple, kind of shallow premises, but because they are so economically successful, can go on to bankroll these kind of absurdly gigantic projects. I mean, we are,
right.
We will get to this with Granblue, but we are now getting to the point where I think the gacha anime adaptations are starting to become some of the biggest budget projects, any given season.
They just have that money back in it.
Right. And not only that, but I mean, again, we'll get into it with Granblue, but now gacha games are getting big enough where they are getting proper game adaptations.
That's right.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. That is a good point. One of the reasons why you see so many of these games is because they're insanely profitable. I mean, if you think about, it's not that they don't take work to make, but
return on investment is absurd.
The amount of investment you have to put into essentially setting up mechanics for people to pay you to get JPEGs of anime girls, it's a lot lower than making a big, huge real video game where you have to like animate things and have physics engines and write stories. Some of these attempt to have a story, I guess.
I think it is worth noting though that it's very easy to say, "Oh, these games are only successful because of their aesthetics," and I don't think necessarily Rage of Bahamut is where we like make this big spiel necessarily. But since we're talking about it here, I think it is worth mentioning that these kind of games, as you kind of mentioned at the start, Jel, did exist before Rage of Bahamut. They have existed in other forms for a while. It's just I think back before, back then, shallow mechanics, back when shallow mechanics were the only thing they had going for them, they weren't that appealing. And I'm not saying this is necessarily a good thing, but I think it does speak to the power of aesthetics and tone to get people to engage in something they might otherwise ignore. I mean, look, when we get to the girls' Frontline section of this podcast, we can talk freely about me playing what is entirely. Let's move on.
Yeah, but we'll get to that. No, yeah,
we'll get to that. But
they have evolved into closer to a proper game, and really it is an experience. Like the audio, the visuals, everything. Like, and a lot does go into it. I'm not trying to downplay that. I guess my point was just that your raw profit in what you have to invest to make one of these versus a full video game, and then the amount of money you're getting back is just like absurd.
Oh, totally. I mean, like, don't get it twisted, right? These games do have a lot of art assets, but they are generally pretty static. It's you have your character art, you have their damaged version, you have their swimsuit or wedding dress version, and
Yes.
it's
So
their Christmas version.
yeah.
So Rage of Bahamut, not a great game, but it was kind of a bit of a
Led to a great anime.
Yeah, led to one great
anime and put
led to one great anime, one bad sequel, and one anime that never saw the light of day.
Yeah, Iro and I were just talking about that before we started, that weird Rage of Bahamut anime
Manaria
thing
Friends or
that
something.
was supposed to happen, and then they canceled it. So that, rest in peace, whatever the name of that project was. But most of them, yeah, maybe not rest in peace. The most importantly though, Rage of Bahamut put a lot of money in Cygames' pocket, who would go on to do other things with that, which we'll talk about in a bit. So moving along to shortly thereafter in 2012, there was another massive success called Puzzles and Dragons.
This is the big one I remember for that, when I was first starting to pay attention to phone games and stuff. I feel like Puzzles and Dragons was the big one.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember that time period, and it feels like, at least to my uninformed observation of the time, it felt like Puzzles and Dragons was at least, if the first one to kind of gain traction in the West. I think Puzzles and Dragons was the first one I started hearing people talking about, downloading and playing.
They did
in America.
They did release that Puzzles and Dragons Mario edition on the 3DS.
Right. I mean, let's be honest.
I think that got a lot of eyes on it.
Yeah. I think
Even
that was
before
even
that,
after.
yeah.
I think that was even after Puzzles and Dragons came out. I think I'm trying to remember. I guess I don't even remember who was saying it at the time, but I just it feels like to me that Puzzles and Dragons was the one people were talking about in the West, and I don't know why. I personally played it. I played it honestly about as much as Jel played Rage of Bahamut. Maybe slightly more. A few hours, and I didn't really see the appeal of it personally, but you could definitely see the roots.
So yeah, I actually played quite a bit of Puzzles and Dragons. I think the appeal is they combined a lot of different things into this game, and unlike Rage of Bahamut, it is actually a game.
Yes, that is
a simple
true.
game, but there is things for you to do. And they combined. Do you guys remember Puzzle Quest?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they basically took Puzzle Quest, which, if anybody doesn't know, was basically taking another game like Bejeweled or whatever match 3 gem puzzle game you want to pick, and adding RPG mechanics onto it. So when you clear a row, it does damage to the enemy, that kind of thing. So they took Puzzle Quests and they tacked it onto Pokemon. So you had these different little collectible monster guys, which, if you want to also talk about appeal, more general appeal, at least up front, the characters in Puzzle and Dragons are all cute little monsters, and maybe that's more of a broad appeal than anime girls.
I think, in retrospect, I guess I did forget about that, but I think you do have a point that for a Western, let's be honest, gacha games are huge even in the West now, but I think at the time, when you're trying to appeal to an American audience, honestly, kind of generic anime cutesy monsters is...
You can point at Pokemon and say, it's like this.
Right, it's a lot easier.
Everybody loves.
Right, it's a lot easier of a sell than, this is Cerberus. What do you mean that's Cerberus? That's just a girl with 2 puppets. Yes, that's Cerberus.
Yes.
And, it's...
Okay, but what if we took all the monsters and replaced them with Koopas and Goombas and Mario dudes?
I have to wonder if anyone actually played
talk...
the 3DS version, but
I heard some people did. But
for the so as far as the Pokemon angle, so it was combining Puzzle Quest and Pokemon, and it wasn't just the cute monsters, but the whole elemental weakness thing was a huge part of that.
Right.
And that's another thing that would end up carrying over in a lot of gacha games, where every character has an element, and you have to build like different teams with different element strengths. That's practically in every gacha game, down to this day. And I'm sure that was done in other places, but I feel like that combined with the gacha thing and like how they manage the energy and how the stages are organized and a lot of things came together in Puzzles and Dragons that are still being copied, even now, 6 years later or whatever. But
never got an anime though.
It did.
Surely it did.
It did.
Did?
It was
shit.
It was
okay,
like a
I'm
kid show
sorry.
though.
Oh
Yeah.
well, okay, that's why.
Puzzles and definitely out
aware.
of all of this.
Isn't it airing just recently?
I think there's been a couple series or something. I don't know. I don't pay.
Really?
Close attention to it.
Yeah.
But this show is probably. We're also talking about the show. This is probably the least pervy of all of these games. It kind of skews toward being more kid friendly because it is kind of mostly cute. Monsters and stuff.
There we go. Puzzles and Dragons X, which finished airing earlier this year.
Wait, what?
In March. It ran from July 2016 to March 2018.
I had zero clue that even existed, but
yeah,
you know what? Goes to show.
I think it existed in the kid show bubble that we usually aren't tracking.
2016 though, is Puzzles and Dragons still going strong in 2016? I feel like for better or worse, I feel like gacha games tend to have a very short lifespan.
I think it was still going pretty strong in 2016. And I don't know about now.
People working on this show, actually.
Oh, some Spider Rider staff, you mean?
Probably if we dig hard enough.
Let's see here.
Yeah.
No Spider Riders, but
I will.
So sorry for the tangent.
I will say, if we want to go full circle, the secret of Puzzles and Dragons is if you get to the end game, all the big rare characters are all still cute anime girls somehow. So they found a way to make that happen. But at first glance, it does appear to be more kind of family friendly, if you will.
I mean, and of course we're saying family friendly, but like anime, the genre the medium itself, we are saying this is a family friendly gacha game on a sliding scale that is
right,
unique to gacha. So
yeah, make sure you lock in-app purchases, all you parents out there. You're gonna get a very high iTunes bill at the end of the month with all the kids rolling without any controls on it. But yeah, so yeah, Puzzles and Dragons was a thing that I think brought together a lot of the the mechanics and kind of the idea of these actually being games and not just card collecting simulators. And yeah, it was a big deal. And actually, I don't know if it's still running. I haven't checked up in a long time, but
probably in some form.
It's part of gacha history. So moving along to something perhaps less family friendly, another smash hit in the history in gacha history, shortly thereafter in 2013, was Kantai Collection, or Konkole as it's been called for short.
This was real big.
This was a huge hit, even just beyond the game. I always compare it to Toho Project, where the fandom just kind of overtook it and made it into this much bigger deal than the core game.
Believe me, Jel. If the doujinshi circles are any indication, Konkole definitely usurped Toho's throne.
I remember. Well, I know we'll get to our posts.
Quite a few years there.
I know we'll get to our posts, but I remember when it came out, we had a lot of comments saying like, "I didn't realize this was a game. I thought it was just a porn thing."
I mean, honestly, you had people saying similar things about Toho as well. So
I think unlike Toho, I think people actually did play the Kantai Collection game. Just it grew into a bigger thing than that. But in general, just the quick concept of the game itself, it's like any of these other strategy games, or gacha strategy games, except you collect anthropomorphized versions of World War II era battleships.
Japanese
which,
battleships specifically.
yes, at least in the beginning, specifically, it was Japanese World War II era battleships turned into cute girls, and
And you play as the admiral, and they just want to do everything they can to please you.
well,
I mean, before it's the thing of like, before we get into the weeds of this conversation, it is probably worth mentioning that in many ways, Kantai of the three we're talking about right now is probably in some ways the most important and influential of them, in the sense of the kind of the highly specific niche it kicks off of the
Right. Yes.
or concept or object or whatever it is, ship, tank, plane,
But they're hot
whatever,
girls.
right, anthropomorphized into a hot anime girl. Obviously, Kantai did not start this off. It could trace its inspirations to the mecha musume genre, which kind of operates in a similar wheelhouse of anthropomorphizing mecha into cute anime girls. But I think Kantai is kind of the beginning of this trend on like that wider scale. Like when we're talking about anime we're watching in any given season, right? It's gun girls or castle boys or musket boys or what have you. Like I think
Horse girls.
You can say it's anthropomorphized X, and then you immediately know what the show is.
Yes.
The X doesn't matter, but
no,
yes.
The X doesn't matter in the slightest. Other than, as we'll get to with Girls Frontline, perhaps its ability to attract its secondary unintended demographic. But
well, yeah, as we mentioned, with Kantai Collection, you do play as World War II era Japanese ships, which,
yes,
if you know your history, there's some problematic elements to that.
It's a bit of a political and social minefield, to say the least.
That's being as diplomatic as we could possibly be about it.
Yes, we could. I mean, yes, if Aqua were here, we could just I don't want to put words in his mouth. We could just go into the tirade about how Kantai is this really fucking disgusting, insidious sort of ploy to normalize militarism amongst Japanese otaku, in the same way that we are now often seeing in Western nerds as well. And perhaps in many ways, we all should have seen the fucking writing on the wall with Kantai, and we all could have stamped this out when we had the chance, but now it's too late. We're all doomed.
Yeah, that's probably a better way of putting it. Yeah, so, as far as that part of it goes, I'd highly recommend, and I will link in the show notes, Aqua did write a very well-written article about this and how, Japan has a knack for ignoring its, past actions in World War II. And, you can check that out. And, yeah, as you said, G, maybe we should have seen some of that coming. But I will say, since that post has come out, I believe they tried to make things better by adding American ships, and the real enemy are these monster girls that are trying to invade Earth or whatever, and we all need to band together and fight them. And it's
weren't they named after Allied ships though, the monsters?
Originally, yes,
yeah,
I believe so.
I don't know what direction they went after that, but they too little too late at that point, right? So anyway, this is the only one on this list I haven't played, so I can't really speak to the actual game itself, and maybe that doesn't really matter, as it kind of morphed into something way bigger than that.
I feel like around
did get an anime, so
yeah, did get an.
I feel like around this time you were playing Chain Chronicle.
Yeah, Chain Chronicles.
And trying to get me
probably
to play
a better
Chain
game,
Chronicle,
but did not last as long or have as much of an impact. But yeah, Kantai did get a anime which was terrible, but also extremely popular, predictably. So
as you do.
But I feel like maybe the craze on that has been dying down a bit as some of these other games have risen to power.
It feels like that.
Everyone's jumped ship to Azure Lane.
Oh.
I mean, let's not even get to that yet, but I feel like the next couple of ones we're about to talk about are probably the actual usurpers to the throne, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
I'm sure Ken Cole is still doing fine and is still probably bringing in, its fan base or whatever. But yeah, I really think you really don't hear as much about it anymore in 2018. And I don't know, at least to me, I feel like that really does speak to the idea that gacha games are maybe some of the best time wasters ever devised, but it very much speaks to their mechanics that they rarely have that long of a shelf life. Once your player base has exhausted what is available, once they've maxed out all their ship girls, once you've unlocked all of them, you realize that there isn't really a whole lot left to do with these games. And I guess we're going to get into this with Granblue, but maybe that speaks to the idea that if you want to survive long term as a gacha game, you need to constantly update your game with new content.
Yep.
That's probably a good transition then, because that's the next game we're going to talk about. In 2014, Cygames returned and launched Granblue Fantasy, taking all that Rage of Bahamut cash and pouring it into what is undoubtedly the most technically impressive game on this list. I don't think
it's not also the most popular one right now, or am I just projecting?
I actually don't know numbers wise if it's the most popular. I mean, it has now been around for over 4 years, so I'm sure it's not growing at the same rate as it was. And oddly enough, as we mentioned earlier, it does not have an official English or worldwide release, which is very strange to me. I think maybe when the game first came out, they might have been a little gun shy after what happened with Rage of Bahamut. But you would have figured they would have put it out by now. But I don't know.
At the very least by 2018, now that the gacha genre has proven itself as a viable, or more, that the Western market has proven itself as a viable, market for gacha games, it really is curious that Granblue is so slow to the draw. And quite frankly, I kind of suspect that maybe Cygames knows this, and I think it's very notable if you compare, for example, Granblue Fantasy to another game that is not accessible to the Western market except by some arcane means, which is Phantasy Star Online 2. And I think it is quite notable that Sega, or was it Sega?
Sega, yeah.
Yeah, Sega does everything in its power. It constantly, purposely updates its servers to try and blue ball American players from interacting with their servers. Whereas the way to get Granblue Fantasy in English on your phone as an American is still a kind of dreadfully arcane process. I think it says something that Cygames also doesn't really seem to do much about it, doesn't seem to try to do much to stop it.
Well, that's the probably the most bizarre thing of all is the fact that Granblue has a full English localization,
right?
And it's a very good one.
Southeast
too.
Asian.
Is this one of those things where they made an English version for Southeast
Asia or something?
Okay.
So,
and that's the odd thing, right? Is anybody who wanted to pick up Granblue Fantasy in America at this point probably already has gone through those hoops to just get the C region version. So I could very much see it being a case on Cygames' part where they look at the Western market and they ask, well, who would sign up for Granblue at this point when anybody who is interested has probably already gotten in?
I don't know, man. If you got the localization already and you just throw that thing up in the App Store, I'm sure you're going to get a more people. But it's weird.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. It is totally mystifying, right? It's not even a Super Robot Wars, situation of it being a rights issue. It's just like, I mean, other than maybe some of the crossover events, but other than that, it is definitely mystifying that they never got around to it.
Yeah, I mean, they even did like I wasn't going to talk about Shadowverse because that's technically a different type of game, but they put that up in worldwide release, simultaneous in English, and no problems. I know it was a bit later, so maybe they were less gun shy about it, but the whole thing's strange. But so you do have to jump through some hoops to actually play this in English. It's once you jump through the hoops, it's not bad once you get through it. But it is kind of strange that you have to do that. But anyway, as far as what Granblue Fantasy actually is, it is a very generic fantasy world type of RPG with very nice art. Somewhat reminiscent of
the art is
like the old Final Fantasy Evil East games. Not the same artist. What's the artist name, G? I think you're about to get into that.
Akio Yoshida.
So the artist of Granblue is Hideo Minaba.
Okay.
Who is, as Iro was about to say, yes, is kind of a well, the joke I used to say is that Hideo Minaba is like a slightly more horny Akihiko Yoshida, who was famous for doing the artwork for Final Fantasy Tactics.
Let's not kid ourselves about Yoshida though.
But let's not kid ourselves. Akihiko Yoshida also did the character designs for Nier Automata. He specifically designed 2B. Dude is definitely not lacking in the horny anime department, but maybe just Hideo Minaba is a little bit more in your face about it with some of the characters I've unlocked in that game. I will definitely a little bit more in your face than Yoshida's fare. I'll say that much.
From a technical point of view, the art is very nice. I like the general style. Like you said, it is reminiscent of Yoshida, who's
it's a really lovely look.
So this is also like, speaking of the art style, like this is all these other gacha games with the characters. They'll bring in like guest designers for all the characters and stuff, but Granblue is the one that has like a unified art style across the whole thing, right?
Yes. I'm not sure if Hideo Minaba necessarily does every single illustration because, boy, that's a lot of work.
Right.
But if nothing else, then their art department has definitely, consolidated a consistent, unified aesthetic that is based on his work. And I think it does a lot for the game, to be honest. Having played a couple of gacha games, that we haven't gotten to yet, but Granblue is definitely, as Jel said, the most technically well put together one. It's the most aesthetically consistent. It's the most, player friendly, I'd say, like in terms of, or it's the most generous I've seen of the gacha games. It is just all in all, technically well
There's a
done.
ton of content.
It's also just
a ton of content, which they crank out every.
Yeah, a ton of content.
I have no idea how they do this.
I mean, shit, dude. I logged in and I downloaded my Jehudi, and now it plays Beyond the Boundary every time I open up that game, and that's pretty cool. It's just also, man, the rest of that game is so goddamn generic. Holy shit! Like, oh my god, your fucking main party in that game. I'm only on like chapter fucking 14 or something out of like fucking. I have characters in that. I have characters in that fucking game where I can't view their Fate episode until chapter 64. Like, it says, reach chapter 64 before viewing this Fate episode. I'm like, motherfucker, what? Like, I don't got that kind of time. And this story is certainly not good enough to motivate me to do that.
I will say the story is not good, but there is actually a story with full written dialogue, a lot of voice.
Yeah.
It's like produced very well. The story itself is...
man, don't even get me on the the voices in that game are... Look, they're well done for what they are. Like, voice acting is certainly better than fucking Girls' Frontlines, I'll give you that. But, oh my god, the main cast if it Miyuki Sawashiro fucking carries that whole goddamn game on her back because the rest of your party is the fucking worst. All right, the little dragon, super annoying. The little blue-haired girl, also really annoying. The fucking gnome shop lady who shows up in every single side quest with the call like hi thing. It's like, oh my god, fucking kill me. Like I didn't really quite understand what you said. You said you just like skipped all the fucking like dialogue, but then like, oh my god, like I just fucking mashed that skip button with every side quest because
the skip button. I actually find the game itself pretty fun. There's a lot of complexity to the gameplay itself is kind of like it's set up so it kind of looks like an old Final Fantasy game where you have your party on the right and you're fighting the monsters on the left.
Yeah, and, I mean, it basically is kind of a turn-based
and you don't
JRPG.
Like, your characters attack in order, like, automatically, so, like, as you get deeper into the game, there's a lot of strategy with your attack order and how you manage your skills and your super meter bar and all that stuff. It's actually pretty fun, and there's a lot of very complex systems. I enjoy, people's mileage will vary on this, but I enjoy games with a lot of, like, party building, where you're building units in certain ways and setting up party formations, that kind of stuff. And for a quote unquote real game comparison, something like, say, Disgaea, which not everybody likes, but I like those games because there's a lot of that kind of team composition building, that kind of thing.
The system of the game lets you and encourages that kind of preliminary building, before the fight even starts.
And so
I do agree. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry about that. I guess, we're being a little unfair just talking about all the trimmings around it because, let's be honest, the trimmings are kind of why these games appeal to people. But yes, Granblue is the one that also probably plays the best. It is the one that definitely feels the most like an actual video game. It has, at least, based on what little I've seen, the most, like, if not complex, then like the most potential there for its mechanics to be experimented with.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, don't even get me started on how to build weapon grids, which I still barely understand, despite being
Dude, I just fucking auto sort. Like, if I'm like, all right, I'm fighting like a water or like a fire enemy, I just auto sort by highest attack and water element, and I just let that shit run because I don't got time to strategize. So
yeah, and they do the thing like we were talking in Puzzles and Dragons, where you have to have your different elemental teams. Every character has an element, and I mean, it's probably, like, if there's one game on here that, like, if you're looking to just get, like, the most bang for your buck, this is probably your best bet. As G mentioned, it is the most generous. So, like, I joined, I started playing back in, I want to say either May or June or something like that. And it was around their 4th anniversary. And so, you can go look up whenever their anniversary is. But this is the 2nd year in a row that for their anniversary celebration, every time you log in, you spin a wheel and you get anywhere between 30 to 100 premium rolls.
Motherfucker.
Every single day for 2 weeks, including a guaranteed one day you will just automatically get a 100 roll.
Man.
So, G, you started a little... G, and even and that was just one event. G started an event where they were giving out 10 every day, which is still generous for, like, 2 weeks. So, I mean, you got, 140 free premium rolls just from that event, and they do other events like that throughout the year. And I don't even know how many hundreds I got off of that one. But
all right, so before we go any further, let's also just establish here, so people understand that Jel is preternaturally blessed by the gacha gods, and at least, we'll get into this more once we start talking about the gacha games I have played and my luck with them, but Jel kind of has this uncanny knack for getting the good shit, and thus never ever has to go through the agonizing like temptation of like, if I just spent $10 right now, I could get Lin 2, but I could get Lin 2, 2 Lins, but
Yes.
just so let it be said, all right, like, for full disclosure, Jel's verdicts on all these gacha games is tainted by his unnatural luck.
I have a
All right, so when he says, "Oh, these games are worth playing," keep in mind that he's talking from his privileged luck status that the rest of us do not have.
I have no comeback for that. You're absolutely right. I am blessed by the random number gods. I have had some very good rolls in my day. So
Anyways, so just to make sure this is anime related, did anybody here actually watch the Granblue anime?
I watched like 2 episodes.
How was it?
It seemed fine. It looked really pretty, but like it seemed very standard fantasy stuff.
It is a good. So I watched the first couple episodes as well. It's a good adaptation of. It's a very good adaptation of the material. The problem is the material is very boring and generic fantasy stuff.
Fucking boring as
So-
shit.
I fucking hate that the main character wears a hoodie under his armor. Like,
Well, you
I
can
mean,
switch,
fucking get
you
a
can
hoodie.
you can switch to the female main character.
Not in the anime, you can.
I guess not in the anime you can't, but yeah.
Look, I will say, not to get too in the weeds here, but I can sort of understand the concept of wearing a hood under your armor, because visually that kind of communicates the same like vibe as a fur collar, except it's more modern feeling, I guess. I don't quite know, but that's all I have to say
The
about
female main
that.
character, just Ramza from Final Fantasy Tactics, but wearing pink.
That is also correct. But that's better than the main dude got design.
Than the dumb ass hoodie.
Yeah. So anyway, Granblue Fantasy is pretty good. Probably, if we're going to objectively measure the best game on this list, although we may be getting more enjoyment out of Girls Frontline, which we'll get to later. But
So I found a chart of 2017's top mobile games. Granblue's number 7. In
Really?
Japan. Yeah.
Huh. What's I don't know. Shit, now that you
All
found
right,
it,
I'm
now
gonna
I'm
go down
curious.
this list from 2017.
Yeah, just read it off, man.
So your number 1, Monster Strike.
oh yeah,
Okay, that's one we did not have in our show notes.
Number 2, Fate Grand Order.
Okay, there we go.
Number 3, Puzzle and Dragons.
still going.
Huh, alright.
Okay.
Yeah.
4, Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle.
What?
Oh yeah,
Number 5, yeah, Dragon
No,
Ball.
I know it exists. I know it was a thing. I just didn't know it actually took off.
Number 5, Disney Tsum Tsum.
oh I know what that is.
I don't know. Okay. Number 6, the Idolmaster Starlight Stage.
That makes sense.
Granblue Fantasy. Number 7. Number 8 is Jikyo Pawafuru Pro Yaku.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. Number 9 is Lineage 2 Revolution.
I know what that is. I played that.
And number 10 is Pokemon Go.
Does Pokemon Go count?
Well, this is just
It's
top
just-
mobile
it's
games.
just-
Oh,
right? So they're not-
mobile.
so they're
All
not
right, I
on
thought it was
gacha.
gacha. Yeah.
So they're not on
Okay,
gacha.
my
Like
bad.
Lineage
I was
2 is not a
gonna say.
gacha. Like a lot of those.
So
are.
that's in Japan. There's another list for United States, which has like Candy Crush, Clash Royale, etc.
Oh, sure. All right. Well, then in that case, I think that does put into perspective that the gacha games we've picked for our podcast are the ones that are seemingly the most relevant in the Western fan base in the current time, I suppose.
I'd point out with Granblue too. I mean, that's 2017 had already been out for 3 years.
Oh,
so
that's
I mean,
true. Yeah, but I mean, Puzzles and Dragons had been out even longer, so apparently
yeah.
they're doing something right. I was
Well, it's
completely
the,
unaware of.
the mass appeal stuff we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But anyway, where were we?
Well, speaking of the number 2 best-selling mobile game in Japan, Hero,
Hi,
how about
what?
you introduce it for us?
Fate Grand Order, are we talking about? Yeah, a good old Fate Grand Order, which at the time was kind of a big deal because it was the first new Fate thing since like fucking this is Fate Zero the anime, I suppose. Which is kind of I have a lot of complicated thoughts on this because
I mean that's why we brought you on for this podcast.
Yeah, like so this was also after they put out that art book that had all the Fate Apocrypha stuff, which at the time Fate Apocrypha, as we know it today, which is a light novel series and anime, did not exist because it was just these designs in an art book that they put out for a canceled MMORPG, and had all these cool new servant designs, and just because of how the Fate universe is set up with the character roles and stuff, it kind of just naturally allows for fans to speculate on other stuff in the universe. And like, oh, what other mythological heroes could fit into the Saber class or the Lancer class? And so getting like official designs and stuff on more servants was like really cool at the time because none of it existed.
I mean, within the context of that fandom, right? It's the sort of thing the fandom had been doing that whole time already, you know?
Yes, on their own.
Fan-made heroes, fan-made, designs, and
exactly.
At the time, and within the context of that, like, even,
at the time when none of it existed, that was like, it was really cool to see, like, here's like here's like 14, 15 new servants. It was really cool because up until then was only what we saw in Fate Stay Night and Fate Zero. Anyway, I guess they saw that fans responded very positively to this, and so they revived the canceled concept as the mobile game, pretty much. Of course, then they also revived Apocrypha as the light novels, which then became the anime. But, the mobile game, Grand Order, which has, like, Nasu writing on it and everything, and has a plot that goes deep into the lore and shit. But,
I mean, alright, Eero, be real with me. Is Fate Grand Order written by Nasu in the sense that it is written by Nasu, or is it written by Nasu in the way that Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel has Hideo Kojima's name attached to it?
It varies depending on the chapter, actually.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Some of that plot is definitely Nasu, and some of it is Nasu doing supervising or whatever.
Right, supervised by Nasu.
Yeah. So, like, you can talk to people. Yeah, you can talk to people who play Grand Order, and everyone, like, for example, everyone hates the Rome chapter because it sucks, and like the staff working on it didn't know what they were doing. And anyway, so now Grand Order comes out, and here's 100 new servants, for the franchise. Every fucking mythological figure you can think of. And remember how we gender swapped King Arthur that one time? Let's just do that with everybody.
And
let's just make them all anime girls.
And I think I'll let you get into more, but I just want to set it up here because, well, I actually think we should switch the order of our next two games on our show notes, because I think there is kind of a thematic through line here. Is what happens to a franchise that is fairly obscure and then blows up, becomes popular, becomes, financially successful, but does it at the cost of perhaps the property's original identity?
All right. I mean, on some level, Grand Order is just capitalizing off the original identity in a way that
I don't know if it's really that far off.
Well,
I mean, isn't there? But you say that, right? And you could argue, right, that a lot of Fate Go is literally just more Fate, but that, in a ways, isn't what Fate was on its own without the rest of what Fate Go is introducing. What Fate is, in some ways, it is introducing more of the same thing that Fate is. Actually, in some ways, does change its identity, because
you're right. I mean,
the original Fate story, right? Like it is about this like rather concentrated event, right? 7 masters, 7 servants. The weird.
What if you had one master universe with 700 servants?
Right. And so, like, in many ways, right, even if the style and tone is the same in Fate Go, or it might be, the sheer change in scale in some ways, I think, actually does change
Right.
the
You're
tone
right.
of the story.
And I mean,
Because,
yeah.
I don't know. In a way,
Absolutely,
it's like it no longer feels special. Right? It's no longer like,
It's
oh
not special
man,
anymore. You're right. Like,
you know, you summoned King Arthur as a woman, but it's like, okay, like I mean, all right,
there's
that's
like
not that special.
there's like 6 or 7 versions of King Arthur as a
Right,
woman.
It's like
in that
now
game
that there's
now.
like there's like 8 versions of King Arthur the woman, like 8 versions of Joan of Arc, 8 versions of like freaking every all of them. Right?
It's like they took all the stuff we joked about and just made it what the point of the series was, kind of.
Right.
And
now that's what people love it for, unfortunately. But
right, pretty much. Like now, it's the most popular thing. That's what everyone knows the franchise for. I actually played Grand Order when it first came out in Japanese. Like I had to download one of those apps on my phone that allowed you to download Japanese apps or whatever.
I'm familiar.
Yep, and played it in Japanese for like a good year or so.
Well, how was Fate Go the game then? If Fate Go the story is nothing to
fucking, you're talking about Granblue giving away 100 rolls, you motherfuckers. When Grand Order is 4 gems to 1 roll, and then you have to.
It's very
you just don't get any gems.
That was my biggest problem with it.
You have to like complete the mission. You get 1 gem, and like maybe you get 1 on your daily login bonus. No, you don't even get 1 on your daily login bonus. You have to log in for like a week straight to get 1 gem, and until then, you're just getting like whatever else bullshit currencies. Actually, they changed it right after I stopped playing because I was saying 4 crystals for 1 roll. People complained so much they changed it to 3 crystals for 1 roll.
Oh boy.
Hey, to me, that's fucking. That sounds like hella good.
Significant
I can't imagine it being more stingy than it is
now.
Because they cut back like on the energy use too. I think in the English release, so it's a little bit better.
Okay.
But yeah, I found when I was playing it, I just ran out of energy and gems, and there's just literally nothing I could do unless I spent money, and I didn't want to spend money on it. Which is what they want you to do.
Yep. I assume this is pretty standard. I assume this is a standard procedure, but like there were 2 different role sections because there was one you could. Okay, so I know all of them have the like roll with the like free currency or whatever, which gives you worse dudes, and then there's the roll with the crystals, which can get you higher level servants. But then there was also a roll for high level servants that you could only do with gems that you paid real money for, that had better chances on it.
I don't know if
I'm
not
sure if that's standard procedure. Okay, maybe they took that away, but at the time it seemed like some hot bullshit.
Yeah, I feel like,
and this is the number 2 game.
I feel like, well, I wonder if they're going by like money earned, because.
Well, in that case, it sounds like Fate Go is very good at its job.
Oh yeah, it's making tons of money.
This being the most stingy, I feel like this is the one that I've seen the most stories of people destroying their lives over.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I forget some major news outlet here put out a video, like YouTube video or something, about like the man who spent $70,000 on mobile games, and I clicked it, and it was fake Grand Order, and I just lost my shit.
I feel like this game baits you most into the, out of all the ones I've played on here, I feel like this is the one that like makes you want to spend money the most. And
plus, I think also,
sorry, go ahead.
Because it has that old like culture, because it's based on a pre-existing franchise, it can capitalize on that.
Right. I mean,
you can go, oh man, Saber. I really want Saber on my team. The Saber. And then you spend all your gems and you don't get Saber.
But that's the thing, right? And in many ways, Fate Go is the one that can get away with it because, like, in many ways, Granblue has to be as generous as it has to be because it's an original property. You know, it has no inherent, quote unquote, value to its name in a vacuum.
Right. What do you care if like hot Granblue lady number 5 is in a bikini this
Yeah,
time.
but if I get Gene Alter. But it's what I was gonna say. I guess we didn't really get into it much this podcast so far, but that is definitely, I think, an aspect of these games as well, is their generosity, right? Like there is definitely a sliding scale, just like there's a sliding scale of horniness for gacha games. There's also a sliding scale of how generous they are with players who don't pay for premium currency, and like I think Granblue is probably on is like on one end of that, where it's like, hey, come on, have a fun time. Here, have a bunch of crystals. Roll for all the big-titted, short-horned ladies you want, or whatever. Whereas like Fate Go is like, oh, you want Saber?
keep rolling, baby.
Right.
Maybe you'll get Saber, or maybe you'll get Boudica for the 100th time.
Or you won't even get a character. You'll get a stack of 3-star craft essences.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right, because it's in the same role for the craft.
Yeah.
So right, my understanding is that roll isn't just for characters, right? You're also rolling for like crafting materials
for the like equipable.
Yeah, it's like equipment
item,
which is valuable, but
man.
not as cool as getting characters, obviously.
How terrible.
I will say the one good thing about FGO, I thought the actual gameplay mechanics are pretty cool. They kind of came up with a cool
I did
battle
like
system.
those. It kind of like it felt like they were taking the battle system from Fate Extra and like expanding it. The like rock paper scissors type.
Yeah, with
thing.
less guessing.
Oh, like anti-army beats.
Yeah, with less guessing than Fate Extra.
They kind of made they basically made the servant classes into elements, so it's like
sure.
Saber beats Lancer beats Archer beats Saber, and then also like Rider beats Caster beats Assassin beats Rider.
I don't know, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that?
It was fine.
Are you
it
sure?
led to some fun jokes.
Are you sure? Are you sure you're okay with a world where Saber has a weakness? I mean,
all right.
I thought it was the strongest servant class, right?
I was talking more about like the art cards and stuff like
skills
that.
and stuff.
I think they did a good job with that. So I won't get into the nuts and bolts of that, but it was kind of fun to actually play it. The problem is you can only play it for like, a half an hour before you run out of energy, and then you have to.
I was pretty deep in by the time I stopped, and so like there was some genuine depth to like maybe building your team comp and like managing your cooldowns and stuff. But the game's not good.
You can't, especially once you get like once you've caught up with like all the normal stages and everything, you can like.
Then there's just no way to get gems.
Like, and like.
You're just grinding endlessly for upgrade materials because everything takes a million.
And like 2 or 3
upgrade.
fights will use up your entire energy bar, and then you have to wait like 4 hours before you can play again. So
Eero, then I have a question, just because as somebody who also quit a certain gacha game after a point, what actually made you stop playing FGO? Like, what was the breaking point, or what was the thing that you either got or saw or did that had you say, "All right, I'm done here. No more."
It was like they released a new chapter or whatever, and I completed it within like 3 days. Completed all the story stuff, and just like the understanding that if I wanted to do more, it was just going to be playing these missions 100 times to maybe get the drops to upgrade my servants, because there was no way I could get more gems, and just like I was just like, I'm done with this. I don't need to see anymore. And I can't read the story anyway, and fuck it.
Right. Forgot this was all back in when it was only in Japanese.
Right. And like, on some sick level, I was only interested in the story in the first place, even though it was only Japanese. And so like, I just wanted more Fey lore, man.
And I got
too much Fey lore.
Yeah, I think Ira kind of pointed out, because I kind of hit the same wall, and I think I might have actually played more of this than Ira did, but you kind of run out of content pretty quick, and I don't think we emphasized enough, like just comparing to Granblue again, they are putting out a new event pretty much every 3 weeks, and in between that time, they're always rerunning certain events. So there's always an event going on in
Granblue.
Yeah. So by comparison, Fate Go puts out an event like every 3 months or something like that, like a new map or whatever.
Every couple months.
Yeah. And it makes a huge difference, even if you're not putting out like a lot of content. Regular content is important. Just always putting out new stuff to do.
So what you're telling me is that Fate Go is operating on the Destiny 2 style of content release.
It's like Warframe versus Destiny.
Well, let's not get into that.
Well, good thing no other franchise.
We are not a gaming podcast. The GLORIO network is, of course, always considering new avenues to expand, but we are not considering a gaming podcast at this moment.
Yet.
Well, good thing no other franchise has been ruined by a mobile game like Fate was, right?
Yeah, so I do think it's actually worth talking about it here.
Yeah, let's do that next.
Yeah.
So as we have been alluding to, another popular franchise that got turned into a gacha game and that eclipsed its previous incarnation was Fire Emblem Heroes. One of Nintendo's first forays into the gacha world, if it may be the first.
Kind of mobile games in general,
or even mobile games
They
in
made
general.
some other. I mean,
what did they have before
makes
that?
a lot of
Right?
money.
Like, it was like Pokemon Go and
Mario Run.
Super Mario Run come out before?
Yeah, the Mario game did well because they had to pay $10 for it.
Or I just meant came out before Fire Emblem Heroes.
Yeah. Right, but but Fire Emblem Heroes is very much a gacha game. That's kind of what I'm going for. And they kind of applied their cult favorite franchise into this gacha formula. It's very very similar.
Awakening and Fates, I think, really made them go, they like the anime titties, do they?
I mean, yes. We could. Me being me, I could go into a whole fucking 30-minute spiel about what happened to the Fire Emblem franchise. But long story short, Fire Emblem Awakening kind of really revitalized the franchise in a very good and necessary way. It introduced a lot of really fantastic changes to the formula, and it also introduced some how shall we say modern appeal to the franchise. And the problem is that Fates kind of doubled down on that part in the worst way possible. And upon seeing kind of how well those did, yes, as you guys said, Nintendo basically saw the writing on the wall and were like, oh, that's what people want Fire Emblem to be. That's what they come to Fire Emblem for. Okay, it's not the tactics, it's not the the medieval story of war and intrigue. No, it's the anime titties. And again, like Fate, I would never ever try to say, oh, Fire Emblem Heroes is missing the point of Fire Emblem, because let's be honest, even back in the day before the rise of the anime part of Fire Emblem, support conversations were always kind of the primary focus of Fire Emblem in a lot of ways. It was that and the god tier GBA sprite animations. And yeah, Fire Emblem Heroes comes out, kind of a similar deal, alternate, universe that has this, convenient excuse for all the heroes of yore to come together, and we're going to play the theme song. And
Marth and Roy fighting side by side for the first time.
Sure. Sure. And the game part of it was a pretty decent simplification of the Fire Emblem format. Just like all of these other games, it had its own triangle, based on the original series weapon and magic triangle. And kind of a similar thing, though. It was a lot of it just came down to trying to get the heroes you wanted, the characters that came from your favorite Fire Emblem.
Right.
And
I would roll because I wanted to get Lynn and Elliewood and Hector.
Right, exactly. Fucking some people here got Lynn twice. Other people never got Lynn.
Two consecutive rolls.
Never.
Two consecutive rolls.
I to this day can look at my Fire Emblem Heroes roster, and it is entirely Lynn free, and there's something deeply wrong with that.
I had to throw one away, or whatever you do with extra
God,
characters.
you fucking son of a... And actually, and see, actually, Jel, I'm sorry. I mean, you wouldn't care anymore, but you were a fool to do that because, in many ways, Fire Emblem Heroes did the thing that actually made its gacha even worse. It pulled a Pokemon. Fire Emblem Heroes, the characters in that have Pokemon-style IVs. They have hidden values for their stats.
So there's like a range between their stats.
Yes. So you could actually pull 2 Lins, and there actually might be a minor hidden statistical difference between the two that you would not notice until you had leveled them up, like, sufficiently to notice the difference.
Oh man, I rolled a Hector, but it was a low level Hector.
I shit you not. Like, that is what that is the end game of Fire Emblem Heroes. It is not just about rolling Hector. It is about rolling like a plus speed minus, like, whatever, like plus speed minus def, Hector or whatever. It is. I shit you not. That is exactly what it is.
Oh my god.
Because if you roll a minus speed Hector, like, his speed will be fall below the double threshold and all this stuff. It's like, I shit you not. That's actually what it is.
Yeah.
And so shit. Like, it kind of magnified the gacha to this unprecedented level of insanity, honestly, because, and we'll get into this a bit with Girls Frontline as well, but it was no longer good enough to just roll, your waifu. You had to roll the good version of your waifu. And this happened after I stopped playing, but then they introduced I think
skill
in general, right. So in general, the thing that I think really turned me off with Fire Emblem Heroes is that, to get into this like Fate Go versus Granblue conversation, I think Fire Emblem Heroes at the start was pretty reasonable as far as gacha games go. It was quite simple gameplay wise, right? Nowhere near the level of mechanics of Granblue, but it was fairly straightforward. You did missions to get orbs, and you spent those orbs to roll for heroes. But then it kind of slowly began to cater more and more to the kind of, I guess we haven't really used the term yet here, but the whale contingent of the gacha genre, which, for those unfamiliar, whales is the term often used inside the industry itself for the small, like extremely small minority of players of free-to-play games who spend disproportionate amounts of money to their population. So we're talking about the kind of people who will play these games and spend upwards from $100 to apparently $70,000 on these games. Like, there are articles written by free-to-play developers who for smaller free-to-play games who would literally go out of their way to cater to specifically 1 or 2 specific whale players because they knew they were that like reliable of an income flow. But so yeah, that's the thing. Fire Emblem Heroes introduced skill inheritance. So basically, you could, like Destiny style, like grind up a hero, for a skill token for their unique skill, and then apply that skill token to another character to create like the most like powerful, overpowered meta combos you could imagine.
Right. I remember I would get like cool characters if their skills were bad or whatever.
Right. So in many ways it was kind of good in the sense of, oh good, I can finally use such and such character because I could just give them the skills I want. But it also meant, oh, that means it's not good enough to just have 1 Hector. Now I need 5 Hectors, so I can grind up 4 of them, the 4 of the less meta Hectors with the bad IVs.
So I can put Aether on everyone or whatever.
Yeah, it was...
Get Wolf Bale for everyone.
That's still not the correct skill, but yes. And anyways, yeah, like, long story short, I eventually quit Fire Emblem Heroes because I could see the writing on the wall, but also more importantly than that, before I quit, I finally got Hector. and so with that, and maybe that speaks to something about this genre, right? Is that I think this genre is about the chase. Like, let's be honest with ourselves.
I never did get
the gacha genre is about it has never been about the destination. It's always been about the chase for your one like waifu or like cool dude that you want, and once you get that, what other reason do you have to play these games?
There is sort of a I don't want to, a letdown, I guess, after you get your favorite character and like suddenly you feel less motivated to roll. I could definitely see a bit of that. Maybe that's why I quit Fire Emblem Heroes so quickly, because I got win like in the first week.
Yeah, you got your 2 wins. You got to leave immediately. You could have left immediately because you know what, you got what you wanted. And you could get out.
I did not play that game.
I had a fucking
actually. It was a good game. I think
I had to.
I got like Easter Bunny Lucina.
I never got. I did get Lucina too. Actually, now that I think about it.
I did get Lucina. It just turns out that she wasn't that good. So
yeah,
not top tier meta, unfortunately. Not like Hector, anyways.
I think overall, it was a pretty solid game. Probably higher up on the list of these, but
I think for Nintendo's first foray into the genre, I think before they really catered to, in my opinion, the worst aspect of the genre, they did a pretty decent job as a first introduction to this style of game.
Yeah. So, it looks better than the thing they're doing with Cygames now, but we don't need to talk about that. So I think it was a pretty good game. I kind of ran out of content pretty quick I'm sure there's more content now, but at the time I played it when it first came out. It came out it said 2017 last year. For some reason that feels like forever ago when that game was out.
I think it's older than that. I have to be honest. I think it's older than that. Maybe I was looking at it feels older
thing or something, but
came out February 2017.
Okay.
Oh, early 2017. Okay,
okay,
I could
getting there.
I could believe that then.
So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty solid game. I don't know if it has any legs left in it at this point, but if you're really into Fire Emblem, it might be worth rolling a couple.
No, actually, if you're
go ahead, G.
If you're really into Fire Emblem, maybe don't play Fire Emblem Heroes because you're only encouraging them.
Maybe that's a better take on it.
Well, with all this money, Intelligent Systems can make a new Advance Wars, right?
Oh, yeah, with all this fucking money, I'm sure the first thing Intelligent Systems is going to do is make Advance Wars for the Switch. Hell yeah, awesome. I've been waiting so long to find out what happens in the Wars world setting. Will Sturm come back? Will we see the return of Baron von Zolt? What is going on with that? What is the true mystery Nell is hiding about Orange Star? No, they're never going to do that. Advance Wars is dead. It's never coming back.
Well, G, we don't have Advance Wars, but we do have? We have Girls Frontline.
Let's just do it.
Which is not Advance Wars, but gameplay wise, it's kind of
vaguely reminds me
of a very simplified version of it. But Girls Frontline, which
so we moved on from what if your girls were girls, and what if your girls were also girls, and now we're back to what if your inanimate objects were girls?
Yeah, what if your guns were girls?
Yes. So Girls Frontline, it's been out for a bit. Just came out in English, I believe, back in like March or May or something like that, a couple months ago. And it is about anthropomorphized guns, so gun girls.
Isn't this this is one made in China, not in Japan, right?
It is made by a Chinese developer, although, again, very much designed to appeal to the anime market, including popular Japanese voice actresses.
As Japanese VAs and Japanese artists for some of the characters. So
all right.
So, it's still very much in the anime crowd. But this game is interesting, aside from the guns thing, but like, because to me personally, that doesn't really matter so much. I know G,
but especially the guns,
gun nut than I am, but it kind of does some interesting things mechanically that are a bit different. It doesn't really have like a traditional like collect your gems and roll the gacha type of aspect to it. And maybe that's kind of what it boils down to ultimately, but you basically keep collecting 4 different resources, and you can spend those resources in a lot of different ways, including using different amounts or different formulas to roll the gacha for different types of guns. And it's been kind of an interesting experience so far.
The thing I will say about Girls Frontline is that, so to finally echo what I said near the start of this podcast, is that Girls Frontline is, so when I started working a new job and I had anywhere from 1 to 3 hours of free time to kill because jobs are boring like that. I got real bored of browsing Twitter repeatedly, so I said, all right, I guess it's time to get into a gacha game. And I'm not going to get back into Fire Emblem Heroes because I don't ever want to fucking look at that thing ever again. I rationalized in my head, well, Granblue and Girls Frontline might seem okay because there's no pre-existing franchise here for them to quote-unquote desecrate for me. So even if they're like the most in-your-face, like blatant about fan service and you know, oh, Master Sama, how can we serve you and shit, like even if they're all up their ass about that stuff, like I was like, well, these are original properties, so they were designed from the ground up to be these things, so why not? And Granblue Fantasy is likely by every possible measurable metric the better game. It probably says something about the strength of aesthetics and theming that Girls Frontline is the one that I'm constantly playing, whereas Granblue is the one that I remember to log in once a day to pick up my shit. And you know, it's kind of, as Joe was hinting towards, the power of the secondary demographic, I guess. You know, I really like guns, I guess. You know, I don't know what else I can say about that. You know, I like military stuff, you know, tactics and equipment and all that sort of stuff, you know, the mechanics of firearms. It's stuff that genuinely interests me. And so even if, you know, Girls Frontline is not really the best game, even if its art direction is dreadfully inconsistent, you know, even if its VA work is honestly quite awful considering the level of talent they've hired, I'll just say that their voice director should probably be fired because they're not doing a fantastic job of it. But it's the one I'm playing because, oh shit, like, I just rolled my 5-star Vector, or, oh yeah, I got my 4-star UMP-45, or I'm currently rolling this goddamn game over and over again to try to get my hands on G11 or Wellrod, so, you know.
Well, I mean, that is part of the fun with, you know, any of these, you know, anthropomorphized whatever games, is seeing how they're interpreting, in this case, different guns into anime girls. And sometimes they're, like you said, the art is definitely inconsistent because some of them are pretty cool and some not so much.
Yeah, some not so cool. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, you know, literally, like, you know, freaking, you know, this is an audio podcast, so there's kind of a pointless thing to say, but like, you know, like, for example, like for the assault rifles, like you have like, you know, a girl like M16 Chan, who's like this badass ponytailed eye patch wearing scarred chick with like, you know, a sweet jacket and a fucking M16 in one hand and a large box that I still don't know what does in the other. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have like freaking
MP5.
Like, one of the less offensive options is like, yeah, sure, like MP5, who's a literal like red beret wearing like white haired like Ilya ass lolly, just, you know, lugging along this MP5 and
Colt Single Action Army.
Yeah, the Colt Single Action Army is, I mean, okay, she's a cowboy, so at least that kind of fits. I mean, she's a lolly cowboy, which really doesn't fit, but you know, it's like it's all over the place. You have like the less offensive options like TAR 21, which is an Israeli-made assault rifle, but for some reason she looks like a space bunny cop. Like that's the closest thing I can compare her to.
Of it, yes, space bunny cop.
I'm about to. I'm gonna apologize in advance for what I'm about to say.
Sure.
With all these gun girls, gives you a whole new meaning to the phrase "eat your gun."
What? Oh,
moving on.
Man, come on.
Moving on.
Well,
yes.
You know, the game actually had a couple of marketing gaffes, including one with some.
Oh yeah, totally. Right.
Some pretty. There were some ads running like on YouTube and stuff where they were using fan art involving the girls and the dude from Hitman.
Yeah, no, they committed plagiarism straight up. I mean, you know, it's like, sure, technically they didn't do it. It was the quote unquote third party, you know, ad agency. But like, hey, that's still on you, you know, to be on top of that shit. But you know, to get to the game itself, it's like, it's kind of like what Jel was saying about, you know, Granblue, I kind of Girls Frontline is a lot simpler, or not simpler, but it's not maybe as complex, but there is that element of it as well. It's like, oh, I got to design my team, or as they're called in this game, echelons, because we're going full fucking Ghost Recon here, I guess. Like, you got to design your team, like, oh, like these guns have good synergy with these guns, like, oh, this gun like buffs units in the front row, so I should put them in this spot on the team lineup, that sort of thing. It has that similar vibe to it. It's not nearly as fleshed out, but it's the case, I think, of Girls Frontline is just mechanically interesting enough for me to be able to enjoy that, and or to the point where the girls and guns aesthetic is not the only thing keeping me around.
Yeah, like the team building's fun, and like when you're actually playing, you're kind of moving around. Like I was saying, like Advanced Wars, you're like capturing bases and like. It's a very simplified version, but it's still, you're playing a game, you're doing something. It's not just like, watching stuff happen on the screen like a lot of these games end up being. So, it's pretty fun. And, like I was saying, the the gacha elements are kind of like, on the one hand, you're just constantly rolling like all the time. Even like when you just like win a fight, you're basically getting like a low level roll, right? And then, on the flip side, and I think you mentioned this earlier, G, like you actually need multiple copies of each character to like really make them powerful, which is kind of like the way they kind of compensate for that, I think.
Right, so that is kind of maybe the frustrating. Like, I mean, I say frustrating, but at least unlike Fire Emblem Heroes, the thing with Girls Frontline is technically you don't need
there's an alternative
copies
way,
of the same
yes.
girl, right?
Yes.
You can grind them up the hard way. It's very expensive late game, but it is doable, which is at least a cold comfort. Like, if getting dupes was the only way to level up, I think I would be a lot more frustrated because once again, as we get into it here, my luck with gacha games is pretty fucking awful. I did not get Hector in Fire Emblem Heroes until they finally released a specific event that increased Hector's drop rate. Yeah. And now, here in Girls Frontline, I have not seen... The only 4-star I have seen in the last 4 days is Colt Single Action Army. And I already have one of her, and I don't even use her in my primary team. So, just...
I'm not going to...
This fucking game.
I'm not going to talk about my luck in Girls Frontline because it'll just make everyone...
Don't talk about your luck. Don't talk about your luck,
Joe. I have done well.
Shit.
I have done
God
well.
Damn. You know what? I didn't even mention it today. I got 100 tokens, so I bought another one of those like fucking drop packs, right? You know what I got? I got the fucking Yukata costume for OTS 14. I don't even have OTS 14. All right? Like, I don't have this rare 5-star obscure as hell Russian assault rifle that actually, frankly, saw very little use anywhere in the world during the Cold War, but I sure have her costume.
Meanwhile, I not only have PKP, it was the first 5-star I ever rolled,
God!
But I also rolled her costume from the event. So
my first 5-star was NTW 20. Anybody who's played Girls Frontline, I'm sure you know how frustrating that sounds. Fuck.
She's not good, folks. She's not good.
And
the one I got is very good.
I'm gonna bite my fist right now. God damn. Ugh.
Well, anyway, overall, I've been having a lot of fun with it, and I feel like next to Granblue, this is probably another one you're going to get a lot of value out of, even if you have terrible luck like G. He does have a good hashtag squad.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. The game is generous enough that with the gun girls you get in the story itself, you can definitely form a perfectly viable, not even viable, very good, solid team with the like default stuff they give you. It's just, look, all right, there are certain guns that I really like the real world equivalent of that I want to get in this game, even if their design is not that amazing. So, you know what? That's also the other thing. I'm going to get into this real quick. My other problem with Girls Frontline, there are a lot of girls I like. I don't care about the guns they're associated with. And vice versa. There are a lot of real-world guns I like. And their girl is not that good. like the MP5, for example. But
yeah, there's definitely some unfortunate design choices with with some of those for sure. But
yeah. But you know what? It's available in English, so
yep, it's free.
at least you don't got to jump through any hoops for it.
G, be honest with me. Have you spent money on Girls Frontline?
Not yet. I've been very tempted to because.
Did you ever spend money on Fire Emblem?
No, never with Fire Emblem.
Okay.
I'll admit I bought the $4 a month pack.
Is that it? I mean, okay. Be honest with me. Is that a good value? Like, do you think that's a?
Yes, because you get like $20 worth of gems over the month or something like that.
And
it's just
only
that they only give it to you for like $4.
Huh.
Which I feel like I've gotten at least $4 of enjoyment out of this game.
I guess. Is this the first time I spend money on one of these games? Maybe. I don't. I feel so.
Otherwise, I have not spent money on these other games.
I feel so conflicted. There's that dumb part of me, right? Like I think most of us, being, hashtag, we're gamers. We,
Please.
Please don't use that term. Please don't use that term.
Shout out to all the gamers in the gamer nation.
Oh god.
Check out par 1527 of my Fake Grand Order Let's Play.
We all grew up playing, more traditional games, right? You spent $60 for a video game. They gave you a set amount of enjoyment, and like you felt you got you either got your money's worth or you didn't. And there is definitely still that stigma, I have to admit. Like, there is very much still that resistance on my part of like, oh, I'm too good for these games, right? Like, oh, I'm just playing this as a time waster, like I'm just playing this at work. But like, no, like I am at the point now where I have Yakuza Kiwami 2 sitting in my PS4, and I'm probably still playing a little bit more of Girls Frontline than I'd like to admit. And there's a part of me that's like maybe trying to like trying to rationalize this in my brain. I'm like, okay, fine. Like, you know what? You are putting time to this game and you're having fun, aren't you? Maybe you should just like throw in a couple bucks. But like, isn't that's I feel like that's a dark path, man. It's all dangerous. It's all a slippery. Like, what happens when I'm the guy who shows up in that news article and it's like, local LA man spends more on Girls Frontline than on real guns. And
well, that's a good headline. Ooh, that's got to happen at some point, right?
Oh, God.
If I spend 50 cents on Girls Frontline, it will be more than I spent on real guns. So.
All right, fine. Well,
it's not as exciting, though.
Different cases for you and I here, but, it's just, I don't think that would ever happen. I think I have good enough self-control. B, I look at my bank account often enough to know that I could never afford to sink to that level, but, there's that aspect of me that's like, I don't know. If I were to spend money on one of these, wouldn't it have been Fire Emblem Heroes? Like, at least I feel like Nintendo sort of deserves my money. I don't know if Micah Games or whoever the fuck makes Girls Frontline deserves it, but on the other hand, they have made a product that I've technically enjoyed, so...
I just wanted the gems, man.
Maybe they do deserve it, maybe... yeah, I don't know, $4 for, like, was it, like 30 gems a day? So you said that like...
Yeah, it's like 900 gems or something.
Yeah, that's not bad, right? That's, like, equivalent to the, the $10 option, or the $15 option, or whatever.
If I could get away with just opening cheat engine in any one of these games, I would. Like...
Oh, totally. I mean, that's literally what some people do with Android emulators, they
Is that thing you can do?
Well, yes and no. My understanding is you can create like an offline instance of Girls Frontline that like
Oh, okay.
You could cheat engine that all you fucking want. It's just that the second you connect that to a server, like you get banned like instantly.
Yeah, right. Actually I saw on the Girls Frontline Twitter they post the names of the people that they banned for that.
Oh man,
on Twitter. They just post a list every month of everybody that they banned for doing that.
Wow. Well, all right, so there you go. Don't do it. Or else they'll take your gun.
Does not endorse
Don't cheat, because just like the liberals are trying to take your guns away.
They're trying to take
Girls Frontline, Micah Games is coming for your gun girls. That's why you need to invest in the gold standard.
Oh man.
I don't know.
Aren't you all?
All right, so let's wrap this up with one final game I wanted to mention. Just came out.
It's even worth mentioning at this point.
Yeah, I just want to. There's one thing I want to say about this real quick. But the last week it just came out in English. Azure Lane, which is literally Kantai Collection. It is.
This one's also made in China, right?
Yeah. So speaking of Chinese, made by Gacha games, I guess, right?
Yeah. So it's literally Kantai Collection. The designs look almost exactly the same. It's girls that are anthropomorphized World War II ships into girls again. The only reason why I checked it out is because the actual gameplay is kind of like almost like a bullet hell game, which is kind of interesting.
Huh.
But yeah, I didn't really enjoy it. The art is very how would I put this? Everyone looks like they're under 12 years old.
Cool.
Save for every now and then you'll get the ones with the comically oversized breasts, but most of them look like little children, and they all call you master and flirt with you and whatnot. It's pretty uncomfortable. And I will say one more interesting thing about Azure Lane is being by a Chinese developer, your main ships that you start with are primarily the Allied ships, so American and British ships, and you are fighting the what do they call it? The Crimson Axis and the Sakura Empire. Who are...
wait, the Crimson Axis, like the Russians?
They're German ships, so you can do the math. And
I
guess they want to throw you off the scent a little bit, huh? But
a little bit. I don't know. Sakura Empire is pretty on the nose.
Which is the Japanese ships.
Like, and the only way you could be more blatant is if you just call them like the Rising Sun Empire. So
yeah. So I think they're gonna. I didn't play it. I only played it for like a day, so I don't know what happens after that. But it looks like they're going to be leaning toward doing the same thing, where everybody joins forces to fight the alien ships in the end. But
I guess this is kind of a moot point because it's been made in China. But I guess the thing is that I actually, doing a little bit of research on Girls Frontline, I found that apparently when it first came out, people kind of accused it of being a Chinese Cancole ripoff. Actually, like, I don't know the details of it, but my understanding is that there were like mechanical similarities between the two that were like at least similar enough. Like, even if the aesthetic and the theming were totally different, that people were like, "Oh, Girls Frontline is just Chinese Cancole."
Right.
But like, at least you could say, well, if it is, then at least it's doing something different. It's guns instead of battleships.
Right.
But this one is just literally the same thing, isn't it? Like, even the aesthetic, right? Like, even the way they decide to portray the concept of Battleship Girls is almost identical to Cancole, right? So, yep. But my understanding is also that it's doing quite well. So
it is.
I guess I guess I don't know. I'm not necessarily asking you, Jel. I don't think you have the answer, but why is this doing so well? Like if people were so hungry for more Battleship Girls, wouldn't they have just stuck with Cancole? Like,
we didn't mention it before.
Like, what does Azure Lane do differently?
We didn't mention it before. I don't think Cancole ever had a mobile app. I think it's strictly like a browser game or something. Yeah.
Oh wait, really?
Don't quote me on that. I'd have to look it up again. But as far as I know, that was always just a browser game. And I
did not know that.
I do recall people being like on our post, the one thing they choose to complain about is, but it's not really a MOBA game because it's on a browser.
Wow. Okay, my bad. Okay, well, that's really surprising. I guess its popularity, just because of the lack of PCs in Japan in general, or the lack of a PC gaming demographic, I kind of just assumed all of these must have been on mobile. I actually did not.
So if there's one reason I could think of why Azure Lane would be eating their lunch, that would probably be it.
It's on mobile. Okay. Yeah. Well, in that case, that actually makes a lot of sense then. I take that back. Like,
people wanted...
let's be honest,
people wanted their ship girls on their phone, and Azure Lane delivered.
Yeah. I mean, look, again, I'm fully admitting that I do play Girls Frontline at home, but the majority of my time spent with that game, like, grinding for materials or XP or whatever, is spent at work, where I don't have access to a console or a computer.
I would point out you can also
so-
play Granblue on browser, which a lot of people do, because that's easier.
Oh,
But
yeah. It's.
I would
I
not
did see
play
that,
any of these
yes.
games on my computer. If I'm going to sit down on my computer, I will play another game.
Right.
But
Yeah, exactly. That's generally my feeling on it. But yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense. And if Azure Lane is on mobile and Concoli is not, then that actually tracks in a way that I believe.
Yeah. So I would not recommend playing that, but just thought I'd mention it. I also thought the Sakura Empire thing was pretty funny. But yeah.
I mean, in some ways, like, is it? I mean, I don't want to say that, like, I don't want to give it necessarily a free pass either, but in some ways, isn't this just the same thing that Concoli was doing, just from the slightly more morally acceptable spectrum?
I don't know if we want to open that can of worms at an hour 40 here, G. But
all right, you know what? No, what? No, fuck you. We are not both sides in World War II.
Yes.
All right? The Nazis were bad people.
Yes.
Imperial Japan, also bad as fuck.
Yes.
Soviet Russia and America, not great. Also, not Nazis.
Yes. So we are clear on that. Yes.
Yes.
But yeah, it is an interesting choice, to say the least, on that. But all right. So
I do just want to say that little, like, not necessarily like to Azure Lane, but for the purposes of this podcast, we kind of just cherry picked ones that we could say things about, but there's a ton more out there. There's all the idle games like Love Live and Idol Master, and all the hot boy gacha games that we didn't talk about, like Token Ranbu, and what's the musket one that just came out.
I literally do not remember its name. I just call it Musket Boys. So.
You know what I mean? But
yes.
So
yeah,
I have actually played the Love Live game and Bang Dream, which is very similar. I never played the Idol Master games because you have to buy those.
Okay.
At least the ones that have come out in America, they were like $30 or something, which is ridiculous. But they're pretty fun. They're like Guitar Hero music games or whatever. If you can stand the music, because the music is the awful anime idol music. Although Bang Dream, I will say, to their credit, a lot of the music in that game is like anime covers of like famous anime songs from like other anime.
Okay.
Like they had like the Digimon OP in there or something like that, or like the Steins Gate OP or whatever. So that was kind of fun. But that game is very stingy. I was not happy with that. But they are out there, and I think the idle games, I'd still probably say they're a little more niche than the ones that we talked about today, but they are very popular.
Right. I mean, I think the point Eero is making is that we are definitely not going to act like we are the authorities on gacha, or that we covered the most important gacha. We were just kind of talking about the gacha games that were, for better or worse, the most relevant ones in our lives, and B, were the subject of anime adaptations as of late. So
right, they're kind of like the most relevant in like the general anime community, people that would be reading the GLORIO blog, I guess, that would know what these are. So
yeah.
All right. Well, one final game. I want to mention the most important gacha game of all, and that is the GLORIO Gacha, which we released back in April. The beta release. You can go check that out now. It's free to play, free to try, and we'll put that in the show. We'll put that in the show notes.
I think we're even more generous than Granblue.
Yes, we're even more generous than Granblue. So you can get quality anime content, anime writing.
The GLORIO Gacha is always in anniversary mode.
Yes.
Always free rolls. Unlimited free rolls.
Yes. So we'll link that. That was a fun dumb thing we did for April Fools, but yes. All right, so I think that'll do it. I don't feel any better about myself after this, but at least we've got it out in the open.
At least it's out there now. People can.
Look, it was no secret that
We can-
Grand Order for a while.
Our sins are out there in the public to be judged by our peers. So
Yes, you may judge us accordingly, but it is the truth is the truth. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for being on. Let's just do our usual housekeeping. You can read everything we write at theglorioblog.com. You can follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can check out all of our podcasts, including the Legend of the GLORIO Heroes that Iro and G both do, where they are following along and covering the original Legend of the Galactic Heroes OVA. That is a lot of fun.
Still going strong.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
I highly recommend you check that out. They're both on the same podcast feed, which you can find on iTunes, or you can link the RSS in the post. Someday I'll get it in other places,
And
but
we're
whatever.
putting them on YouTube these days now.
Yes, and I still don't think any of us have figured out how to directly access our YouTube channel, but we're on YouTube. Maybe next time.
Search
Maybe
the GLORIO blog.
Yeah, isn't there like an actual URL, like YouTube/the GLORIO blog, or can we make that happen? I don't know. But
I'll look into it.
let's figure that out for next time or whatever. But we are on YouTube with the podcasts, so you can check us out there. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends,
Tell your friends.
tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.
Bye.
See you later.
"新しい彼氏ってられない」「街に繰り出すよ